Hey, I'm April, and this is Bitch Bed Podcast. Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome back or welcome to the podcast. Thank you to everybody that listened to last month's episode. Thank you to everyone that reached out after hearing the news that I shared in the last episode. It is very much appreciated. And I'm happy to know that that situation didn't just piss me off. So thank you to everybody who was mad for me with that news. I hope everybody has been having a good month. And if not, I hope next month is better. And if you're like me in between jobs, hopefully you find your next step in the world, because I'm currently still looking for mine. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, like and share the episode with anybody that you think would enjoy it. Before we get into this month's episode, I do have some news to share. I'm excited to announce that I have created a Patreon. So if you enjoy the podcast and want to support it in some way, the link is down below in the show notes. So before everything happened last month, I had an idea for what I wanted to do for that episode. When I was doing episode 8, I was talking about how when I was younger, I used to just mold myself and my personality into whatever situation or person that I was around needed me to be. And it kind of got me thinking about my own identity and my journey through, I guess, like self-discovery and like different versions of myself and the many, I don't want to say many, but I definitely had quite a few identity crises over the course of my life. And I'm sure we're all always like begging the question or trying to find the answer to the age-old question of who am I? And no one really does it out loud. We all just I feel like we all just do it in our own heads, and we just kind of silently try and figure out, the person that we are and the person that we want to be and the person that we aspire to be. So I figured I would just talk about it and share some lessons that I've learned along the way and how I've kind of started like discovering my own identity. Because I don't think I really had one as a child. Like, I don't remember a vast majority of my childhood. I'm pretty sure I just put my childhood in a box and put the box in a closet, and we don't talk about that and we don't go near that box. Because people will bring up like different memories that they have of me as a kid, and I just have absolutely no recollection of myself doing that. So I don't really have a good gauge on what type of child I was, but me and my husband always have like a debate because he always likes to say that I'm an extrovert, and I know for a fact that I'm not. I'm very much an introvert. And he's like, no, your extrovertedness was suppressed by your mom, so that's why it doesn't come out very much, but you're a very extroverted person. And I go, that's not true. I go, yes, a lot of things were suppressed because of that woman. And I definitely suppressed a lot of my personality when I was in that house. But I still don't think that I'm an extrovert. I tell him I'm an introverted extrovert. And he goes, what does that even mean? And so then I have to explain to him, I said, extroverts get energy from being around other people. I said, introverts, they get energy by being by themselves. They're not social beings. They just like being alone. They like to just, do things on their own. I said, I'm very much like that. I said, but I do have, the tendency to have like an extrovertedness come out when I'm very comfortable around certain people. So like when I'm around friends and family, that my extroverted side will come out because I'm more comfortable and I'm, he goes, you're very outgoing and you're very charismatic. And I go, yeah, but that's only when I'm around a very select group of people. I said, if you send me to like a random place by myself, I'm not going to be extroverted at all. I'm probably not going to talk to a single person and then I'm going to come home. Like introverted extroverts have like a social battery and I have a social battery. I get done with people and then I want to go home. So we always laugh, and that discussion has been brought up multiple times throughout our relationship, and I'm sure it's going to keep getting brought up. But it's very fitting for this topic that I'm talking about. And so I definitely suppressed a bunch of things when I was a kid. And I think that a lot of it has to do with I lived with a very jealous mother. So when you have that type of being in your house, especially as a little kid, and you just want your mom's affection and love, and so you're just gonna suppress any part of you that she doesn't like because you just want the approval of that person. And with her being jealous of a child, I learned that ability very early on. And when I started becoming a teenager, I still didn't really have a really solid sense of identity because I felt like a lot of my identity was tied to a friendship that I had throughout, I think, all of my teenage years and into my early 20s. And like, she was just my safe place. We were attached to the hip. If, we were very much a pair. If you saw one, the other one was very close behind. We did a lot of things together. I was constantly at her house. And growing up and looking back on that friendship, I definitely feel like I enjoyed that friendship so much because I was just able to turn my brain off. And I would go along with anything that she wanted to do because I was just content being out of the house. So whatever she wanted to do, I was game for. I wasn't really going to protest a whole bunch. And as we got older, and as we both started experiencing life, and she was always the more outgoing one out of the two of us. I wouldn't consider myself a friendly person because, like I said earlier, I'm not really a people I don't like people, and I'm not really a people person. So I don't really make friends very easily, or at least I don't think I make friends very easily. And so we had this saying that she would make friends for the both of us because she would just go up to anybody, strike up a conversation, and then if she liked them, she would bring them back and be like, okay, April, this is our new friend. And I go, okay. And then, that was the dynamic that we had. But as we got older and as, we started evolving, we started changing, she's definitely started to want to become more of an individual. No fault of her own, no fault of anybody's, but I was still wanting to cling on to the pair because I didn't know who I was outside of that friendship. And then my own trauma kind of came back, and I had to address it, and I had to figure out who I was, not only outside of that friendship, but also outside of this trauma that I was starting to have to process. And life was just taking us in two different directions, and the friendship ended up running its course, and it fizzled out, and we each went our separate ways. And toward the end of the friendship, I noticed that she was starting to pull away and just wanting to be her own person, which is fine. But then I also had the realization that I was going to lose basically all of my friends because she made the friendships. I was just there as like the plus one, basically. So I then had to figure out, okay, well, who are my people, and who am I going to turn to when, I need someone to hang out with, or I want someone to hang out with, or, who's going to be there for me if this is no longer an option. And it led me to my husband, because me and my husband, we've known of each other since we were little kids. And earlier in the summer, we had reconnected and we saw each other for the first time in like 5 years. And we just started talking and catching up. And then I ended up thinking to myself, like, okay, I need to find my own people. I need to like find my own group. And I didn't really know where to start. But then I remembered my husband and I go, oh, like I've known him like long before I met this person. So like we have kind of a similar background. Like, okay, like this could be like a good start. So I ended up messaging him on Facebook, and the rest is all history. And we definitely ended up becoming more than friends, obviously. But he was definitely like the first person I like reached out to kind of like figure out my own people, basically. And now, funny enough, I use the same phrase with him that he makes friends. Not really makes friends with the both of us, but he's like my feeler. Like I'll send him out to like feel out a situation or feel out a group of people, and then he'll come back and be like, okay, like this is what I'm picking up on. So he's definitely an extrovert, whereas I'm not. And he has that golden retriever energy, and I very much am the black cat of the relationship and of many friendship groups. And it was funny because when I was in my early 20s and I was going to therapy, I was having this basically identity crisis because I was losing the friendship that I wrapped my identity in. And then I had this trauma that I was trying to process, and just, it really felt like my entire world was crumbling around me. And I remember having a conversation with my therapist, and I was saying to her, I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. And I've always been like a strong person. Like that's just always a quality I've always associated with myself, and not like a physically strong, but like a mentally and emotionally strong type of quality. And when I was having this crisis and I was having this meltdown moment basically in my therapist's office, and I just told her, I was like, I want to get back to that person. Like I used to be so strong and I don't feel like that anymore. And I just want to get back to that version of myself. And I want to get that girl back. And she looked at me so sweetly and just told me as gently as she could that that girl was gone and I was never going to get her back. And it definitely wasn't what I wanted to hear, but who really wants to hear any of the hard truths that our therapists give us? None of us do, but we all need to hear them, and I definitely needed to hear that. And even thinking back on that conversation now, it reminds me of a quote that I saw. I don't know if I like read it somewhere or if it was a video that I was scrolling on. It was definitely on my phone, and it definitely didn't come out of my brain. But it was something about like different versions of yourself get you to the next step, and like you can't go backwards, but like they got you through and they helped you survive these circumstances and these instances. And once you're out of those situations, then you lose that version and then you become the next one. And so that was very fitting because you can never go backwards into like the different versions of yourself, because what kind of causes us to shift and change is we have like these realizations, whether it's about ourselves or about the environment that we were in or about the people that we were around, or trauma decides it's gonna come up in your brain and just say, hey, look, remember this, and then you have to deal with it. But different things end up coming up, and once you know the reason why a change has to happen, or you have more context about something, you can't go back and unlearn those things or not know those things. So the old versions of you basically are like ignorance is bliss. And we see them as like the better versions of ourselves because they didn't know what we know now. But you can't go backwards, and you can't unlearn something that's, been brought to your attention. So, although moving forward can be very difficult and, it just it seems like an easier way to just go backward and be like, I'm just going to pretend I didn't learn this and go back to the person that I was. It's not going to work because you're going to know the thing that you don't want to know, and trying to brush it under the rug or push it to the back of the closet or just pretend like it's not there isn't going to help. Take it from someone who did that for 22 years. It's not a fix, and it's not something that's going to benefit you in the long run, because all it's going to do is it's going to cause it to fester and fester and fester, and it's going to build, and it's going to get mad, and then it's going to come back, swinging twice as hard. And then you're going to have more problems to deal with. So when me and my husband got together, I really kind of wanted to make a point to not have my identity get wrapped up in a relationship, because I just had a situation where I had my identity wrapped up in a friendship, so I didn't want to just change it and have it wrap up in a relationship that I was in. And I like to think that I do a pretty good job, because we definitely have our differences, and like not in a bad way, but just we are very different people. And he reacts to things differently than I would react to them. And I still feel like I have a very solid sense of self outside of our relationship. So I think I'm doing a pretty solid job of it. But once I graduated college, I ended up moving to a completely different state. Within 4 days, after graduating, I was in a different state and starting a whole new life. And that was definitely a big change, not just because I was in a different state, but also I wasn't around all of the people that I grew up with. I wasn't around, friends that I've made, the family that I had. I wasn't around really anybody that knew me. And it was kind of terrifying and also liberating at the same time, because it was terrifying because nobody knew who I was, but it was also liberating because nobody knew who I was. And I was able to kind of sit with myself and figure out, okay, well, nobody knows who you are. So who do you want to be? And, what's the type of person that, you are, and, what qualities do you want to have? And so I really got to figure out who I wanted to be in this new life that I was creating. And I remember talking to my husband as I was trying to figure out, this new phase of my life and this new phase of me. I would tell my husband, I would be talking to people from my hometown, and I could almost feel the masks that I would wear, because I definitely had different masks that I would put on based on who I was around, because I developed that habit as a teenager. So I would just, I'm talking to this person, okay, I have this mask. Okay, I'm talking to this person, I have this mask. And I would get done having these conversations, and I would tell him, I could feel the mask trying to put itself back on, but I would have to fight it because I had those masks for a reason, and I was wanting to make a very conscious effort with this new person that I was becoming, that I didn't want to have a mask for every other person that I would talk to. I just wanted to be me, and I wanted to be comfortable just being myself and talking to people as myself instead of whatever version I created for their own benefit. So it was definitely hard learning how to be unapologetically myself. But it's definitely a nice change that I've noticed within myself. But that's not to say that it doesn't require any work, because it definitely does. Sometimes it involves unlearning habits that you've had, like myself, putting the mask back on when talking to people. But I also had to make the decision that I wasn't going to say things just because it's what's expected of me. And what I mean by that is, I can't remember if it was the beginning of this year or like the tail end of last year, but it was semi recently. And I was on the phone with my dad and we were talking, we were having a conversation, and his son had walked in because he still lives with my dad. His son had came in and butted into our conversation, started talking to me about whatever, I can't even remember. But I was just trying to like get the conversation to end because I didn't want to talk to him. I wanted to talk to my dad. And toward the end of the conversation, he said, "I love you." And I took a beat and I just said it back. And then the second I hung up the phone, I felt so disgusting and I felt so gross. And I was like, that was a lie. I don't feel those things. I don't feel that type of affection towards this person. And I was like, why did I say that? I only said it for, my dad's benefit. I didn't say it because I felt it. And I was like, I'm not doing that ever again. Like that, I just felt so disgusting. And so I had to make the decision. I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm also not going to care if somebody has something to say about it. So I think it was like either the next week or maybe like the 2 weeks from that phone call. Again, I was on the phone with my dad and we were having a conversation, and his son comes into the room and he just throws out "and I love you," because I think we were ending the call. And I just didn't say anything. I just stayed quiet. And then my dad goes, "Did you hear him?" And I respond, "Yep." And my dad just goes, "Okay then, well, have a good night." And then we ended the phone call. So I definitely feel like my dad felt like something, is up, but he hasn't asked me about it. But I was like, I'm not going to say something that I don't mean to a person that I don't even care about just because it'll make them feel better or it'll make my dad feel better. I was like, I'm not in that business anymore. I used to say a lot of things I didn't mean, but I'm not that person anymore. And I'm not going to do something that I don't believe in. And when you have those moments in your life, you really have to hold yourself accountable, because you can say you're going to be this type of person. You're not going to put up with this. And, if this situation were to arise, this is how you're going to handle it. Like you can talk a big talk, but it's in the moments where you have to make the decision. Am I going to back up what I said to myself, or am I just going to follow back into the habits that I say that I don't like? So you really have to be comfortable going against almost like your instinct, because you built these habits for yourself. It almost feels wrong to go against them. But if they're unhealthy habits, then it's going to take some work to unlearn those habits or to do something different in those situations. So luckily, I haven't had to be in that situation since. And I'm pretty sure my dad kind of, he either keeps his son away from me, or his son just decides he needs to stay quiet when I'm talking to my dad. Either way, I'm not going to be upset about it because I just called my dad to talk to my dad. But I was really proud of myself because I said that I wasn't going to say those words to that person anymore. And then the next opportunity that I had, I made sure I stuck with it. So I learned that the different masks that I created for people and that I would put on for people weren't benefiting anybody but them, because they definitely weren't benefiting from me. So what was benefiting me was to not put on those masks at all, because I feel like I got to a point where I was like, I'm going to just be myself, and I can be a lot. I'm not for everybody. I can be incredibly intimidating. I can be very intense. I'm a very passionate person. I got a lot of things to say, and I'll say it with my whole ass fucking chest. And some people don't like that, and that's fine. I'm not going to be for everybody. I'm not everybody's cup of tea because I don't even fucking like tea. But it's not about being something for everybody. It's just about showing up for yourself and being the person that you want to be, because that's the person that, you know, you aspire to be, or those are the qualities that you admire in somebody else that you look up to. So you want to have those qualities. And I'm glad I'm not the person that I used to be. Not because she was a bad person, but I don't need her anymore. She got me to the point of being out of that environment. She got me away from those people. She got me, you know, to the life where we can just be ourselves and be the person that we want to be. And she's just not needed anymore. She did her job, and now she gets to relax. And now, you know, the current version of me gets to do her job, and we get to go to whatever point where I need to make another change. And then she'll take, you know, the backseat, and she'll get to relax. And then the system and cycle keeps going. So you don't have to go through these big monumental shifts. Like, you don't have to have your trauma door ripped out from under you, or, you know, the door broke off its hinges. You don't need to have, you know, the second round of trauma smack you in the face out of absolutely nowhere because of some TikTok video. It doesn't have to be some big traumatic event that brings you to your next change. It can be as simple as tomorrow morning you wake up and you're like, you know what? I don't really like this aspect about myself. I don't like that I respond to the situation like this. I don't like, you know, that I'm, you know, I say yes to people that I don't really mean it, or I don't really want to do something. Like, I don't like being this type of person. And then it's just you deciding, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do this instead. And actually saying, or actually doing what you said you're going to do, even if it's just to yourself. So you get to decide when you want to make any changes, or if you want to make any changes. If you're listening to this and you're like, you know what? I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I'm good. Like, right now we're vibing, we're having a good time. You know, you have a sense of self that you're comfortable with, and that's fine. But maybe that next moment for you can be 6 months from now, or 6 years from now, or 6 days from now. Like, it doesn't have to be a specific time frame, or, you know, a milestone that you look out for. It's just something where you're like, you know what? I don't like this, and I'm going to change. It can be as simple as that. And I encourage everybody listening to this that if they have qualities that they're not the biggest fans of and you want to change it, then do what you need to do to change it. I've always said, at least to myself, for as long as I can remember, you spend the most time with yourself. As much as me and my husband spend time together, I still spend 100% of my time with myself, just like he spends 100% of his time with himself. Yeah, I'd say a probably solid 85% of the time we spend our time together, but there's still that 15% that I will always have to myself or with myself, and he will always have with himself, and you'll always have with yourself. So you might as well like the person that you are, because you're going to be spending a lot of time together. And if you've gone through your own identity crisis, or, you know, identity reflections or evolution process, let me know about it. What qualities have you left behind with past versions of yourself, and what qualities are you looking to gain in the future? If any of this has resonated with you in some way, shape, or form, please like the episode, subscribe to the podcast, share it with anybody that you think would enjoy this perspective. I would really, really appreciate it. Again, if you enjoy the podcast and like the content that I give and want to support it in some way, my Patreon is linked down below. If you're ever curious about other episodes or why I named them after song titles or what songs specifically that I've named them after, you can check out my BB playlist on Spotify, which is also linked down below. As always, to all the negative voices in your head, bitch bet. I'll talk to you guys next month. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. Until we talk again next time.